Okay. So we have up on our website a questionnaire that people can answer, whether your perspective is internal or your perspective is external. Could you give us a couple of words how that kind of works out?
Oh, sure. That's a great characteristic because, in many ways, this is sort of the place where people find glue to hold a relationship together. And it has to do with the way that we see the world. External type people are people who see the world in reference to what's going on outside of them. And they're able to see the world probably in bigger terms in some ways than internal types because they're looking at it in a global kind of what's the world doing perspective. And in simple terms, let me just say that an external type goes in to look at a piece of property. And the way that an external evaluates the property is how it looks. How does this place look? And how it is designed, and whether it's pretty or not pretty, or attractive or not attractive, those kinds of things. An internal type of person is someone who's looking out at the world, but referring it back to themselves on the inside. So an internal type person is always looking at how things feel on the inside. The internal type goes into exactly the same piece of property and looks at that piece of property in reference to how it feels on the inside. So how do I feel in here? Is this the right place for me? Do I fit in here? But the process goes on inside the person. Now, when you get two externals together, it's easier for them to talk about a subject than if you get an internal and an external together. It's not saying that they can't have a relationship for a long time, especially if they know each other and know each other's perspective. But it's easier if you're in a very long-term relationship with someone who has a similar perspective.
You know what I noticed too is that people, internal types, they feel good just by feeling good. It's like that's their criteria. Where external types, they have to look in the mirror, and if they look good, then they feel good. It's like they have this criteria that's a little different from each other.
Yeah, it is different, and that's really what I'm saying is that you're in a way looking at the world, but using a couple of different language structures to define the same conditions and situations. And it took us a long time to see this characteristic and how it actually worked by studying a group of people and observing and listening and defining language so that we could get a hold of how these things actually worked like. But that's a good description.
It must have been a very tedious process. I mean, it sounds like you're observing lots of dialogue, lots of struggles and stresses, and then you came up with, okay, what's the major differences here?
Yeah, it was, and I don't want to imply that it was. When I say tedious, I certainly don't want to imply that it was something that was unpleasant, because as a clinical social worker, what you love is how people work. It's like an auto mechanic who wants to know how the car works. So for us, it was like studying the internal workings of the system to see how it all came together.
I could see why it took over 20 years. I mean, you don't get this information overnight.
No, you don't. And, certainly there isn't anything in our education process and all the schooling that we had, and all the degrees that I might have behind my name. There's nothing there that talked about this aspect of human behavior.
Yes, and I'm just thinking, relationships 101.
Yeah, truly.
This could be a course in a college curriculum.
Yeah, it could be. And I think it's something that would serve counselors, therapists, people who want to sit and talk with couples and help them understand one another. It serve them enormously and help people get away from the idea that, I want you to be different than the way you are, and then I want you to be different than the way you are, which goes nowhere because people are what they are.
It goes back to it's nobody's fault.
Yeah, it does.
It's nobody's fault.
It does.
So would you be willing to be the first teacher, the first course of relationships?
Oh, I'd love it. Are you kidding? It'd be wonderful. Thank you.
I'd sign up. And I'd get all my friends to sign up. So glad you were here today to share this with me.